My name is Sarah. I'm 29 years old, and I'm from Portland, Oregon. Solo travel had always been my quiet obsession, and Kenya was the next name on my list. The moment I stepped off the plane at Jomo Kenyatta International Airport, a warm African wind wrapped around me like a welcome I didn't know I needed. Nairobi was a city of contrasts, glass towers standing beside dusty markets, and wild nature pressing right up against the edge of the skyline. After checking into a small boutique hotel downtown, I couldn't sit still, so I went out to explore. The streets were alive, vendors calling out over baskets of fresh fruit, hand-woven fabrics, and beaded jewelry stacked high. I stopped at a tiny street cafe and tried nyama choma, Kenya's famous grilled meat, served alongside ugali. It was incredible. As the sun dropped low, I made my way back to the hotel, tired but buzzing with the kind of excitement you only feel on the first night somewhere brand new. From my window, I could see the city lights flickering in the distance. Kenya already felt alive, and I could hardly wait for what came next. The next morning, I joined a safari tour into Nairobi National Park. Just minutes outside the city, it was surreal watching lions, giraffes, and zebras roam free with the Nairobi skyline rising behind them. Our guide explained that this park was one of a kind, the only wildlife reserve in the world sitting right at the edge of a major capital city. As our jeep rolled down the dusty tracks, a family of elephants crossed the road ahead of us. Their sheer size, their calm, quiet presence left me completely speechless. A lioness lounged beneath a tree, watching us with lazy indifference. It was the first time I'd ever seen wild animals this close, and my hands were still shaking with adrenaline an hour later. After the safari, I visited the David Sheldrick Wildlife Trust, a sanctuary for orphaned baby elephants. Watching them play in the mud and drink from giant bottles absolutely melted my heart. Kenya was already proving unforgettable. That afternoon, I visited Giraffe Manor, the famous boutique hotel where giraffes wander the grounds freely. I wasn't staying there, but I booked a feeding session anyway. Those long-necked beauties leaned over the balcony, taking food gently from my hands. One even leaned in and licked my cheek, a full giraffe kiss. Afterward, I explored the Karen Blixen Museum, the former home of the Danish writer whose stories about Africa had first inspired me to come here. The colonial-style house was beautiful, surrounded by lush gardens and views that looked like something out of a painting. Standing in her home felt surreal. That night I went back to my hotel and had a quiet dinner on the rooftop restaurant, sipping wine, watching the city lights below. I felt safe. I felt happy. I had no idea my peaceful trip was about to take a terrifying turn. It was just past midnight when I heard a soft knock on my door. Half asleep, I ignored it, figuring it was someone passing by. Then I heard whispers and the sound of the door handle slowly turning. My heart started pounding. I sat up in bed, breath shaking. Suddenly the door creaked open. 3 men stepped inside, their faces partly covered. My stomach dropped in pure fear. "Who are you? Get out!" I screamed, grabbing my phone. One of them smiled and took a step closer. Before they could move further, I hit the hotel's panic button and dialed emergency services. "There's security coming," I shouted. The men hesitated, exchanged a look, and bolted from the room. My hands were still trembling as I locked the door and shoved a chair against it. Minutes later, police arrived. The hotel manager and security guards rushed to my room while officers began questioning me. My voice was still shaking as I explained what happened. They forced the door. "There were 3 of them," I said. The officers pulled the security footage, and it showed the same 3 men loitering in the hallway earlier that night. "They must have been watching you," one officer said. That single sentence turned my stomach. They had planned this. The police opened an investigation, and the hotel tightened its security. I didn't sleep that night, replaying the moment over and over in my head. I'd traveled alone many times before, but I had never felt genuinely afraid like this. The next morning I debated cutting my trip short, but deep down I knew I didn't want fear to steal my adventure from me. The hotel manager apologized repeatedly and upgraded me, free of charge, to a suite with round-the-clock security. I spent the day at Karura Forest, a peaceful escape from the city. The fresh air and quiet trails helped clear my head. I walked past waterfalls, caves, and bike paths, letting nature slowly steady my shaken nerves. Later, I visited the Kazuri bead factory, where local women handcraft beautiful beads and pottery. Their stories of resilience and strength reminded me that I was strong too. I refused to let fear take control of my trip. Determined to enjoy the rest of my journey, I flew to the Masai Mara, one of Africa's most iconic safari destinations. Endless golden plains stretched out before me, dotted with acacia trees and wild game. As our jeep cut across the reserve, I watched a cheetah sprint across the savannah, zebras grazing nearby, and a herd of elephants bathing in the river. My guide, a Maasai warrior, shared stories about his people's deep connection to the land. That night I stayed in a luxury-tented camp, falling asleep to the distant roar of lions. Under that endless African sky, I finally felt at peace again. The next day I visited a Maasai village, where locals welcomed me with traditional dance. The Maasai women taught me how to bead jewelry, and I even tried on their famous red shuka. One of the elders shared stories about their nomadic way of life and how they coexist with wild animals. "The land gives to us, and we respect it," he told me. His wisdom stayed with me. Before leaving, I bought a handmade bracelet, a symbol of strength and resilience. After everything I'd been through on this trip, it felt like it meant something. Wanting to end my journey on a relaxing note, I traveled to Mombasa, Kenya's coastal city. The white sand beaches of Diani were breathtaking. I dipped my toes into the warm waters of the Indian Ocean and felt my worries slowly wash away. I explored Fort Jesus, a centuries-old fortress with a dark history of battles and colonization. Walking through its stone tunnels, I imagined all the stories buried in its walls. That night I ate fresh seafood by the beach, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. Kenya, despite everything that had happened, had completely stolen my heart. As I packed my bags, I reflected on the entire journey. Kenya had been wild, beautiful, and full of surprises. The attack at my hotel had been terrifying, but it had also taught me to be stronger and more careful. At the airport, I looked over the souvenirs I'd collected, the Maasai bracelet, handmade beads, and a carved wooden elephant. They reminded me of the incredible people I'd met and the adventures I'd lived. As my plane lifted off the ground, I smiled. I had arrived in Kenya as a tourist, but I was leaving with memories that would stay with me for the rest of my life. Some of them terrifying, some of them magical, but every single one unforgettable.